My name is Denny Coleman. I'm President and CEO of the St. Louis County Economic Council. And along with my two co-chairs of the Immigration and Innovation Steering Committee, Rodney Krim of the St. Louis Development Corporation and Joe Reagan of the RCGA, I'm very pleased to welcome you here to this morning's program, which coming on the heels of our opening of really in the beginning of the steering committee just 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago, is a very timely subject matter with a very prestigious group of speakers and panelists this morning. I also want to provide appropriate kudos to Mayor Francis Slay and County Executive Charlie Dooley. They are the inspirational leaders, not only the government leaders, but who have really put their imprint on this effort moving forward. As Joe Reagan has said, this isn't always the easiest subject matter for elected officials to support, but they have really dived into this subject matter in a very big way and are extraordinarily supportive of the work of the steering committee as we move forward. I also want to thank the RCGA for hosting us here this morning. We rapidly outgrew the offices at the World Trade Center and with your great response, and so we appreciate Joe's hospitality and everybody to accommodate this great group. This is the right subject at the right time. We were talking briefly before this program started with Rachel, who I'll introduce here in a minute, about the fact that there has been not just the seminal study that Jack Strauss did at St. Louis University, which really crystallized the rationale for this effort moving forward, but also just organically what has grown up in the community is a much more conscious understanding of the importance of immigration from our companies, who are in very much of a need for the talent that immigrants bring to the community, along with the understanding that from a neighborhood development perspective and across the broad spectrum of skills and just the numbers of people and the energy and the life being infused into a community, how important immigrants are to a community. Jack's study brought out very, very clearly how important it is to us to be competitive economically with our peer cities across the Midwest and elsewhere. And so we are at a wonderful time here in the St. Louis region to be looking at this issue, supporting this issue, and the work of the steering committee will bring forth a number of great initiatives, not only in the public policy arena, but others that we will be able to support moving forward. And I want to recognize briefly a couple of folks. One is, would everybody who is on the steering committee that has been appointed by the mayor and the county executive please stand and be recognized? This is a wonderful group of civic, business, educational, and governmental leaders from throughout the region who have taken this upon themselves to bring this region forward in a wonderful topic. I also want to recognize, he just stood, but Tim Nowak and his staff at the World Trade Center have been providing a lot of the staff work for this. And Tim, thank you for the great work that you and your folks have been doing. The focus of today is to really listen to some ideas and some thoughts from our great city to the north, Chicago. And we're joined by some great minds from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, a global think tank located in Chicago. And I would like to introduce our first speaker, Rachel Bronson. Dr. Bronson is Vice President of Studies for the Chicago Council. She has a deep background in research, and we are thrilled today that she is going to share her thoughts on what we are trying to accomplish here. Dr. Bronson?
Denny, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for coming out on this August morning. You can imagine, as we were putting it together and we saw the date of early morning in August, we said, really? To which Governor Holden and Bob Fox said, we'll do it. And it's just tremendous. So we're delighted, and thank you all. We really appreciate it. All I'm going to do is kind of introduce our effort to you today, what we're about, and quickly turn it over to Tamar and our amazing panel. But I do want to thank the Immigration and Innovation Steering Committee just for bringing out all the support and allowing us to fall in on such strong audience and support. I want to thank Focus St. Louis, the Holden Public Policy Center at Webster University, Immigration Works, Tamar's organization in Washington that she'll talk a little bit about, that brings small business leaders together around the issue of immigration reform. I want to thank World Trade Center, Tim Nowak. Everyone's been really tremendous and helpful, so we really appreciate it. I'm delighted to introduce our effort today. The Chicago Council on Global Affairs, 90-year-old organization, we've been working on issues on and around immigration and immigration reform for at least the last 10 years. And this is kind of the latest incarnation of what we're doing. The Chicago Council has about 7,000 members. We do about 150 programs a year, put 20,000 people through our doors. So when we focus on an issue, we do it very carefully and thoughtfully because of all these members. And so when we take polarized and polarizing issues like immigration on, we do it with considerable attention, but there's been enormous support from our membership on that, and I can tell that it's probably a very similar membership to what's here given the turnout. So a little bit about this task force that Tamar is going to talk with you about. This is, as she'll explain, it's a draft, and we're intentionally bringing a draft around because the task force focuses on, it's a Midwest voice on immigration reform with a focus on economic competitiveness. So the task force, we have 9 co-chairs, which you can imagine is quite a large number of co-chairs. But we did it because we wanted to make sure it was bipartisan, and it represented members from across the Midwest and different sectors of society. So among the co-chairs, we have 2 governors, Republican Mike Rounds from South Dakota, Democrat Chet Culver, former governor of Iowa, Mayor Daley from Chicago, Democrat. We have business leaders. John Rowe is a big business leader in Chicago, and a number of others trying to get business, political, and then within the task force itself, people from across the region. So from St. Louis, we have Governor Holden and Bob Fox. So thank you for your support on this. Jack Strauss came up to brief our group earlier this year. This group has come together to put together the report that Tamar will talk about, and now we're coming out and coming back to the hometowns of folks on our task force. So we will be in 7 cities in the next 2 weeks. We started in Chicago yesterday. St. Louis is the first stop, so we have enormous excitement, and we're very encouraged about where we head next. But just for your own sense where we're going next, we'll be in Des Moines, Fargo, Minneapolis. We'll be at Purdue and West Lafayette, Indiana, and then we're going up to Detroit. And then come September, we might spin back and go through Cleveland and then back to Springfield. What we're also trying to do, and this is very important to share with you, is build what we're calling a group of 500. That once we have this report set and talks about some thoughts we have on what the Midwest needs to be economically competitive, we'll have that group sign the report. But we're trying to also build a group of 500 where 500 individuals or organizations from across the region sign on to it. So when we go to Washington in early 2013, it's a group of 45 Midwesterners, 9 co-chairs, and then 500 others, and the sense that there's something bigger than just an academic report coming to Washington. And if we can authentically say this is a Midwest voice and there's something different that Tamar will talk about what's going on in the Midwest that needs to be heard, we think that it actually might give cover for politicians to make some hard decisions. So if what you hear today you find interesting and you want to know more, or you'd like to see when it goes from draft to final, my colleague Jill Ritterboss, who is sitting right over there, will take your business card, stay in touch with you, and then get you a copy when it's final. Hopefully you'll see your input today. It's something you'll like, and we'll be able to include you in part of this effort. So with that, I want to thank everyone again, and I want to welcome to the podium Governor Holden, who's been a tremendous friend of the Chicago Council, and we're delighted to be doing this with his support as well. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Rachel. And everything she said about the work of the Chicago Global Council is accurate. I would encourage all of you to look into it. There's a gentleman by the name of Richard Longworth, who's a fellow at their institute, who's written a book, Caught in the Middle, America's Heartland in the Age of Globalization. It should be your Bible about talking about the Midwest and what has happened, what hasn't happened, and what needs to happen in the future. Because this is not about St. Louis. It's not about Chicago. It's about our region. And it's how we respond to this global economy as a region is going to determine how successful we're going to be in the future. I'm delighted that all of you are here. Good morning. Let's get some life here. This meeting is designed to gain early feedback to a draft of our report so that, as Rachel mentioned, it truly represents a view from all of the Midwest. First, I'd like to take a moment to highlight the importance of this project. Our economy has been struggling since 2008, and speaking as a former governor, I'll tell you it's been struggling since 2001. And it's not getting a whole lot better. And business leaders are desperately trying to find solutions to revitalize our economy. Most issues will not be easy. The future of entitlement programs, taxes, government loans, health care, energy, all are going to be hotly debated. But immigration is an issue that has been tabled for far too long, but offers some real concrete and easy solutions to helping our economy grow and expand in the future, if we can find the strength to tackle the issue. Unfortunately, the 2010 Chicago Council Public Opinion Study showed that over 50% of Americans, when polled, felt that immigrants were bad for the United States. Bad for American companies, bad for our own standards of living, and bad for our communities. In fact, 74% said they were bad for job security for American workers. The Council is actually analyzing new 2012 data at this moment, and it's showing some easing in the toxicity of perceptions toward immigrants. We also have a Midwest-specific poll in the field now that is due in September. That data will incorporate our final draft of this report. With this in mind, our task force is planning to demonstrate how these generalizations and perceptions are misled, and that immigrants are in fact essential to the fabric of the Midwestern economy. I might add, it's been essential from the beginning of the Midwest economy. This is not a new phenomenon. We're not asking people to change how they view life. You look around St. Louis, what made St. Louis? You look around Chicago, what made Chicago and Cleveland and Cincinnati? So we're talking about really returning to our roots, the thing that made us strong. And that's the reason it's so important. Given that this is an election year, if you hadn't noticed already, we will come out with our report right after the elections to urge the President to tackle these issues. The Midwest cannot afford to remain on the sidelines any longer with what's going on, and particularly with the leadership coming out of the Midwest in these elections, from President Obama to Vice President candidate Ryan. We have a lot of representation. Our senators in both political parties, our representatives across the board, can truly reflect, represent, and lead us as we move forward. We have with us today our lead writer and project director of the report, Tamara Jacoby, who will be introducing our key findings and recommendations. She is an outstanding lady, by the way, besides just being very professional. We also have with us two local leaders who will comment after her presentation on the importance of the immigrant community to the St. Louis economic vitality. There'll be plenty of time for discussion about all of this as we move forward, and I'll try to keep us on time, Tim. Tamar Jacoby is the president and CEO of Immigration Works USA, a national federation of small business owners working to advance better immigration law. She is a nationally known journalist and author. She is the author of Someone Else's House, America's Unfinished Struggle for Integration, and the editor of Reinventing the Melting Pot, The New Immigrants and What It Means to be an American. Previously, she was a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a senior writer at Newsweek magazine. She is also a Schwartz Fellow at the New American Foundation. Let's welcome Tamar to the podium.
Well, thank you, Bob, and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and brief you on the report. I do want to start with a little disclaimer. The report came out of my word processor, but it's the product of more than a year of work of our group of over 50 people, those 9 co-chairs who Rachel talked about, and the 45 members. Their names are all on the last few pages of the report. I won't read them to you, but do look at them because you need to imagine these people standing behind and around me. These aren't my words. These aren't my thoughts. This isn't my call to Washington. This is the product of a big group of Midwesterners. And they're Midwesterners from every different walk of life in the Midwest. We had the former mayor of Chicago, we had several former governors, we had immigrants' rights advocates, we had business leaders, we had representatives, I shouldn't put it past tense, we have representatives of the region's great universities, we have faith leaders, law enforcement, several small town mayors. So you can imagine the group that sat around this table for 4 long days coming up with these recommendations for Washington. So what I'm going to do as their representative this morning is 3 things. I'm going to talk briefly about the assumptions behind the report, why we did it, why we did exactly this, and why we did it now. I'm going to walk you briefly through some of the high points in the report, a couple of the standout elements and standout numbers. And then I'm going to try to talk about some next steps and open it up to a conversation here. So the 2 assumptions behind the report, they're 2 important ones. Number 1 is that the Midwest has something distinctive to say about the immigration debate. I come from Washington. I spent the last 10 years in Washington trying to get immigration reform, trying to help make it happen. And I've been watching politicians in Washington try to deal with this for the past 10 years. Presidents have come and gone. Different presidents have tried. Democrats and Republicans have tried. The intensity of the debate rises and falls. But at this point, it's kind of like watching the reruns of a bad movie. We've seen it too many times, and the end is always disappointing. So one of the key assumptions behind this project is that it's time for people outside of Washington to lift up their voices and add their ideas to the debate. And frankly, to give the people in Washington a kick in the pants, people who haven't been able to solve it. And it's also part of this assumption in the task force is that Midwesterners in particular are particularly well placed to say something about immigration and to get the debate moving. Number 1, Midwesterners are pragmatic, they're problem solvers, they have a long experience with immigration. As Governor Holden said, the Midwest has probably seen more immigration from more countries over a longer period than any region in the country. And the Midwest's recent experience of immigration is also distinct in many ways. Unlike some regions, the Midwest needs high-skilled immigrants, but it also needs less skilled immigrants to revitalize the workforce. like most regions, it needs immigrants as workers, but it also needs them to help replenish a stagnant or in some places even dwindling population. And in the Midwest, I think there's an appreciation, unlike in some other regions, for the way immigrants are revitalizing towns and areas, bringing new life and energy and entrepreneurialism and good values. Not every region understands that or appreciates it, but I think in the Midwest, many people do. And so assumption number one behind the report is that the Midwest needs to raise its voice, that you have a vital and unique contribution to make to the immigration debate, and that voice needs to be added to the debate. The second point, and I think you all understand this from the discussion I've heard already here this morning, but the second assumption behind the report is that we're making the argument from competitiveness. There are many ways that the immigration system is broken in many ways, right? And there are many different reasons to fix it. Some people come to it for moral reasons. Some people come to it for human reasons. Some people come to it for fairness reasons or security reasons or rule of law reasons or foreign policy reasons. There are lots of reasons to care about immigration. And whatever your values, there are many ways that the broken system is getting in your way or infringing on your priorities. But the assumption behind this report is that we need to, as Americans and as Midwesterners, we need to talk more about the way the broken system is hurting the American economy, how it's holding back our economic growth, how it's depriving us of skilled workers and entrepreneurs, how it's putting us at a disadvantage compared to our competitor countries, how it's slowing our job growth and limiting our productivity. And as you know, many people in the Midwest and elsewhere, many people who aren't educated about the issue, believe that immigrants steal jobs from Americans, or that they're an economic drain. And the point about the assumption behind this report, and the point we're trying to make, is that that's exactly wrong. That the exact opposite is true, that immigrants create jobs and enhance American productivity and help businesses stay healthy and contribute to the economy. So those are our two assumptions. Midwest has a voice, and that we need to argue it from an economic competitiveness point of view. So briefly, let me go through, tell you a little bit about what's in the report. It's jam-packed with interesting stuff, and I do urge you to look at it carefully. We do have some politics of immigration. We do have a little bit on the moral case for immigration. We do have some history of immigration in the Midwest. But as I say, the important point that we come down to is the economic point, the competitiveness. And we're talking about both highly skilled workers, right? Everyone gets, many people get that. The guy who invented the Pentium chip, that might be good for America. We're also making a point about less skilled workers, right? About people who are willing to work on farms, and people who are willing to be home health care aides, people who are willing to work in food processing plants. So a couple of numbers, just to throw out some of the highlights. According to the Indiana-based Lumina Foundation, the United States will not remain globally competitive unless 60% of the people living here have post-secondary degrees by 2025. 60%. Well, right now, only 38% of Americans have post-secondary degrees. And the point is, immigrants can help us with that. We need to be educating more Americans, but if we can bring some immigrants with post-secondary degrees, that's going to help us bring that number up. Another number from a different part of the economy. A 2011 survey by Deloitte and the National Association of Manufacturers found that even in 2011, when the U.S. was at 9% unemployment, manufacturing companies couldn't fill 600,000 high-skill manufacturing positions, even when there was 9% unemployment. Immigrants can help with that. Immigrants can help us fill those jobs. Again, another part of the economy. We thought about very high skilled, medium skilled. In 1960, half of all the, 1960, not very long ago, right? In 1960, half of the American-born men in the U.S. workforce had dropped out of high school and were looking for unskilled work. Half. Well, today, how many U.S.-born men in the workforce have dropped out of high school? It's less than 10%. But we still need people actually to do unskilled jobs. We still need farm workers and hospitality workers and food processing workers. Immigrants can help us with that. Another fourth number, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the occupations that are going to grow fastest between 2010 and 2020 are home health care aides and personal care aides. And I don't know about how many of you, but how many of you think your children are going to do that, or your neighbor's children? Not very many. Immigrants can help us with that. Finally, a last number. For decades, for most of my life, for most of many of your lives, the U.S. was the destination of choice for foreign students. People who wanted to go to world-class universities came from all over the world. They often came to the Midwest, in fact. And then after, when they graduated, they stayed to build careers. Well, today, according to a 2009 survey, of course, the students people are still coming from all over, but Indians and Chinese are among the biggest groups, and the ones that those are the countries we're competing with most actively. 6% of the Indians studying in U.S. universities say they're going to stay after they graduate. 6%, and only 10% of the Chinese who are studying in U.S. universities say they're going to stay. And a big part of the reason is the broken immigration system, and fixing the immigration system could help us significantly in keeping those people so that we don't educate them at our expense and then send them back to our competitors to help build their economy. So the point about the report is we've lifted up some of these numbers. We've made this case about the economy. Again, we also have some other pieces in there making the case about the politics and about the moral argument. But in the end, what we come down to, and the part of the report that I urge you to look at most carefully, are the recommendations at the end. And the recommendations are a little different than recommendations in some reports. We don't actually recommend specific policy steps. You know, we thought about this long and hard, and we decided that immigration is a very technical issue, and in the end, the bill, the reform, is going to be a compromise between Democrats and Republicans, right? So, you know, that's going to happen in some back room in the Senate. They're going to decide how exactly the policy should be put together. So that it didn't make sense for us necessarily to recommend exactly what the policy fix should be. But what we did want to do is talk about the pieces that the Midwest needs fixed. We wanted to lift up and present to the politicians in Washington, here are the 8 things that we really need you to tackle. And so I urge you to look very carefully at pages 15 through 18. That's where we lift up those specific pieces. It's about skilled workers and unskilled workers and entrepreneurs. That's the part of the report, that's kind of the heart of the substance of the report. But I'm running out of time, and so before I close, I want to draw your special attention to the conclusion of the report, where we make a really important point, we think, about the politics of immigration. And this is really, in some ways, the headline of the whole report. This is, you know, I think when they write up the stories, this is what they're going to focus on. Because, as all of you know, for many years, the rallying cry about immigration and about fixing the immigration system has been comprehensive immigration reform. And the goal, what we all meant by comprehensive immigration reform, was one big multi-dimensional package that had a little something for everyone. Something about enforcement, something about the unauthorized workers already here, something about fixing the legal immigration system, something about high-skilled, something about low-skilled. And the idea was put them all together in one package because it would be easier to pass one big package. And the hope was we would pass it all in one big fell swoop, a big grand bargain. I was going to say like healthcare, maybe I shouldn't compare it to healthcare. But the idea is one big omnibus bill. And the point we make in the report is that we do still need that. We do still need to fix all those different pieces. We can't leave any of them out, and we can't leave any particular group in there out, right? But, and this is really the important but, and this is kind of the headline of the report, if Congress can't find the will, if Congress can't figure out how to combine all those pieces in one package, and we're starting, after 10 years of trying, we're starting to think that maybe they can't, we'd like to see them start where they can. Fix the pieces that they can fix. Even if they have to start with some small pieces, we'd like to see them start to chip away at the list of what we need done. On the theory that you solve some of these smaller pieces, you take them off the table, you Democrats and Republicans learn to work better on some of those small pieces, and that will build them And that will build the momentum of its own. I guess I. Wow, that was really dramatic. That's never happened to me before. But so somebody doesn't like that argument. I knew it would be controversial. The point, what we argue in the report, and I think this is fresh and new, and again, I think this is kind of Midwest pragmatism coming to the fore. We're saying that we need all these pieces, but that if you can't do all the pieces together, start now and make the progress that you can make. That even some of these small steps, we believe, will create momentum, and just get go. Again, the bottom line of the report is a kick in the pants to Congress, and we're saying if you can't do it all, start where you can. So my time is up. I want to do one more thing before I stop, which is really throw the ball back at all of you. We're here today not just to explain this report, not just to tell you what we're doing. We're here to get your input. The point is this is meant to be a report that comes from these 9 co-chairs and the 45 members of the task force, but also 500 other people across the Midwest. And we're counting on many of you to be among that 500. And we want your feedback today. We're really here to get your input, to get your feedback. There's a blank page in the report. That's because we want you to fill it in. We want to hear from you. We want to hear how you think immigration system is broken. We want to hear how you think it's holding back economic growth in your community and in your business. And we want to hear from you specifically what you think the government needs to fix. With that, I'll be quiet and open the door to the other speakers. Thank you so much. Sit down over here.
I'm supposed to tell you that the report will be at the front table when we finish, right?
If you haven't already grabbed a copy.
If you haven't grabbed a copy. And we will not charge you for it.
That's right.
A freebie today. Would Joe and Elizabeth come on up, and as they're coming up, a couple things that just mentioned to you. What Tamar is really talking about, it's a business decision. Mayor Slay, I'm sure, would love to have 100,000 new people in downtown St. Louis shopping our stores and eating in the restaurants. So it's a business decision. I think in 2010, there was 9 Nobel Prizes given in science. 8 of them went to Americans. 5 of those 8 were foreign-born. It's really all through our culture, if we'll just think about it. I want to again thank Tamar for all of her work. She's worked tirelessly in this, and she is available not only today but going forward on responding to any questions and everything you may have. I know I've given her plenty. Our first respondent is Joe Regan. He's the president and CEO of the St. Louis Region Chamber and Growth Association. He began this position earlier this year and previously served as the president and CEO of the Greater Louisville Metro Chamber of Commerce. Among his many accomplishments there was to foster an inclusive cultural encouraging Louisville to become one of the most welcoming cities in the United States to the people from around the world. After Joe makes his comments, we'll hear from Elizabeth Berger, the Vice President for Global Human Resources at Monsanto. And I might tell you, Monsanto truly has been a leader in this effort for a long time. She is responsible for identifying and attracting talent for the company in over 60 countries. She also sits on the St. Louis Immigration Innovation Steering Committee. And so now I invite Joe to come up and make his comments, and then Elizabeth, and then we'll get to the good portion of this where you get to ask all the fun questions. Thank you.
Well, let me say first, we are standing on the shoulders today of Governor Holden for really helping this region be globally connected and have global relationships. So thank you, Governor Holden, for all you've done. You know, as Denny mentioned, I have the honor to co-chair with Denny and Rodney Krim this amazing steering committee that is tackling this issue of immigration and innovation. and it is both an issue that has both problems to it and great opportunities. And it does take courage for elected officials to step forward and say, this is an issue we want to take on. And I think Mayor Slay and County Executive Dooley have done the right thing for the community, for the region, on doing this. It takes courage because of something that I learned growing up outside of the city of Chicago. It has something to do with where votes come from, right? So, where do elected officials get their wins? They get them from the registered voters of their backyards and in their areas. As Mayor Daley Sr. used to say, the most important real estate you'll ever own is your own precinct. And by definition, people who aren't here don't live in those precincts and aren't registered to vote. So it takes an enlightened leader to think about the future and the growth and where it's coming from. So it's really critical that we, every time as we talk about, and I think that what I hear from Tamar is absolutely, I'm incredibly energized by it because I think it's absolutely the right tone, but we can only get so far on a burning platform. We do have to celebrate the courage when we see it and celebrate the steps that are being made. From our perspective in this region about the economy, you all know it very well, so this is truly choir practice, but we will want to hit a couple of fundamentals again. While we've been blessed with a phenomenal location in the world economy, location alone will not bring about economic prosperity in this region. It is about people, people, and people. And every economic report shows two clear facts about this economy. One is we have tremendous fundamental strengths in financial services, strengths in health services and sciences, strengths in multimodal logistics, globally competitive strengths. And every economic report that I've read about the St. Louis region starts with our and when it identifies our weakness is population growth. That's where our weakness has been. That's where the softness has been. And certainly people come for jobs, but jobs follow people. That's the microeconomic world that we're dealing with today. The companies are looking globally for talent. And that is if that is both our problem and our opportunity, because this is a wonderful place. And if we think about the long arc of history and think about why we're here, I remember my first day on the job. I was at Mass at the old cathedral on the across the street here, and I was reading the plaque in there about the history of St. Louis, and it said. It noted that this regional economy was founded by French entrepreneurs. So if we think about innovation and entrepreneurship, we go back and we say, why are we here? Why is this regional economy here? It was certainly founded by entrepreneurs coming from someplace else, looking to pursue their dreams. And they found that place here, and they began to pursue those dreams here. That same equation is here today. 2 days ago, I toured the Center for Emerging Technology, and Barbara at the center said something to me that really captured much of what we've been talking about. She said the companies that are in that incubator are referred to as micro-internationals, that they are many times just 2 or 3 people strong, but their connections globally with clinical trials, with research, really connect St. Louis to the entire world, micro-internationals. I think that term, or micro-global, however you want to look at it, sums up exactly the economic reality that we're in. We need to think of and the reality is of being micro-global. So when I hear the report, my response to the report is very enthusiastic. I do think it's important for us to have a distinctive Midwest voice, and we do have a distinctive perspective. I do think that Tamar has made a very clear point about a unity of both what we could call a moral imperative or social imperative with an economic imperative. And that's one of the reasons why I'm hopeful. Maybe that is a pragmatic way of looking at it. But if people don't get that it's the right thing, if they can at least look at it from the standpoint of some enlightened self-interest around their economic prosperity, then there is hope. And I think that's one of the things I'm seeing, that for the first time, or at least at a point in time, we have this clear unity between the moral imperative and social imperative in this country, based on the reality that we are in a long-term labor shortage in this country. Even though we are in a high period of unemployment, we're in a long-term labor shortage in this country. And as the cycle turns, that will become more and more relevant. And the skills gap that we've heard about is real. Just a few nights ago, I was speaking to a group of corporate executives, and they were citing the skills gap between the number in this region of the number of openings they have and their inability to fill those jobs at all levels of the education, of the labor spectrum, with the right skill sets of people that are needed. So we have this pending crisis that is very different than the recession. It's going to be a crisis in our recovery if we don't quickly make quantum changes, which is what the steering committee is really all about. And I think the other thing is that I think this idea of focusing on Washington from a national policy framework is absolutely the right thing to be doing. Midwest Voice, focus on Washington national policy. I applaud the idea of presenting the whole and the unity of policy, but also saying move, act, get done. There's time we need to have a sense of urgency and completion about what we're doing. But as important that is in Washington, I don't think we can forget that that's not where the real change is going to happen. And I'm not talking about the policy at this point, because that is a national policy. But the real change is what we've embarked on here, to become the most inclusive and welcoming community in the world, not only for people from all over the world, but from every one of our neighborhoods here. If we are that inclusive community, then the policy, I think, will follow. I think connecting to our immigrant story is always important. We all have an immigrant story. We take a look at this from anthropology. We know something very factual, that in this world, we have always been moving from the very beginning of time. We have all been on an immigrant journey from the very beginning of the time, and we've always been one. We have just forgotten that, and we need to remember that again. And finally, I think that what I heard in terms of the report that's exciting is the sense of the global mindset. John Zogby has identified in his research that I think it's 40% of our college juniors today expect to be working in their careers in a foreign capital. Not want to, not think they are, expect. So what we do for the professionals, the entry-level workers, the children who are coming here, is what we will expect for our children who go abroad. And that global mindset makes it, again, another imperative that we have more at stake here than some of the old arguments we've done before. So thank you for your time.
Good morning. Wow, lively group. So as Governor Holden said, I'm Elizabeth Berger, and I lead human resources for our global business operations at Monsanto. For those of you who don't know, Monsanto, I think, is right in the heart of this issue. So we are an agricultural company focused on increasing productivity for every acre of land and every drop of water that's out there, and doing that by making sure we improve and conserve our environment. We have a few factoids that I think might be helpful to demonstrate why we're interested. So we have about 21,000 employees. About half of those are inside the U.S. About half are located in 65 countries around the world. In the U.S., about 40% of our employees are located right here in the region. This is the capital of our research and development community, the hub for R&D for our corporation. And I think this issue hits us on several fronts. Certainly, the criticality of obtaining highly skilled labor, deep technical expertise. This population has an opportunity to help us, and the accessibility of them is really critical to us. At the far other end of the spectrum, at Monsanto, you'll hear people talk about the I-states in Missouri. So, you know, the heartland, America's heartland, is where just a significant amount of our business and our operations are. And at the other spectrum of labor, despite technology, despite mechanization, it takes a large number of farm labor to make these operations work. So we bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 seasonal workers, shorter windows of time each year to help produce crops in the United States that then feed countries far outside our own reach. I'm excited to be a part of this group. I'm excited to be here today and look forward to taking any questions you may have.
In context, what immigration says to politicians on both sides, the right and wrong of it, or doing the political thing versus the right thing, what is the reality to get this Congress to pass any kind of immigration legislation?
Really good question. Is there any possibility of movement here? So just a little background. I've been in D.C. literally for 10 years trying to do this, and I worked very closely with the Bush White House and Senators McCain and Kennedy, and we thought we were that close in 2006 and 2007. Since 2006 and 2007, it's been what I call frozen tundra in Washington. No hope of anything. And let's just be realistic about that. What I'm seeing in the last 6 to 9 months is little signs of thaw in Washington. Not any talk of comprehensive immigration reform, excuse me, not any talk of that hard fix, well, not much talk anyway, of that hard fix, which is helping unauthorized workers. But there's a sense, even among Republicans, that the immigration system is so broken, the legal immigration system is so broken that it's really starting to get in our way. And where this kind of first came up, just to give you a sense of how real it is, when they tried to crack down harder, when they tried to pass E-Verify, which is the system that employers can use to check if their employees are authorized or not, the electronic system, Republicans were all ready to pass it, and they realized if we pass that, we'll put labor-intensive farming out of business in the United States. And so even these Republicans kind of said, whoa, wait a minute, we can't do that. So even to pass the fix that was so obvious to them, which was tougher enforcement, they realized they couldn't do unless they made some other changes. So you've started to see in the last 6 to 9 months bills to fix the legal immigration system. I don't know if you bring your 20,000 on H-2A, but they realize that the farm seasonal labor program is so broken that no farmers use it. And if they're going to impose E-Verify, they better fix that farm seasonal labor program. So in the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen about a dozen bills in Congress to make little fixes in the legal immigration system. They're rifle shot, small bore, focused fixes, the farm program, students, STEM, science, technology, education, and math, students, entrepreneurs. It's a little spotlight here, a little spotlight there, a little spotlight there. Not a single one of them would help an unauthorized Mexican, right? It's all for the legal system. And they're not enough, but it's progress. Now, none of things passed yet, but you have Republicans proposing these bills. And one of them, it was really interesting, one of them was a bill, it was a tiny little technical fix, but it would, as you probably know, every country, there's country caps on the numbers of visas they give out every year. So every country has the same number of visas. India and China have the same number of visas as Belgium. Not too many people come from Belgium. A lot of people want to come from India and China. So they came up with a bill that wouldn't actually add any visas, but at least would get rid of those country caps. And they figured out a way to make it friendly for Democrats, too, because they raised the country caps for the family members coming. And guess what? That bill passed in the House by 380-something votes. Like, you can't pass motherhood in the House with 380-something votes, right? And it didn't pass in the Senate. It got blocked in the Senate, actually by Midwestern Senator Grassley. So it didn't pass in the Senate, but it showed that actually Democrats and Republicans could come together and start with these small fixes. And so my hope is that when they come back, right now they can't do anything, right? Right now it's hopeless. But after the election, the hope is that they're going to start. And you start to hear stuff. It's like anything in a legislature. You start to hear kind of rumblings that they're eager to do it. And I'm just hearing in many offices and powerful offices, we have to move on immigration next year, and Republicans have to be part of it. So, I think it's going to be small, but my hope is that some small steps can start to create momentum. We can start to get some fixes, and we can, be rolling.
It wasn't your survey, but you reported the Indian and Chinese students, 6 and 10% indicating a willingness to stay. That obviously reflects the overall brokenness. Do you have any sense in terms of all the international college university students in the United States, what percentage of them could be allowed by current laws to stay?
That's a really good question. I don't actually have the answer to that. That's a really good question, and I don't know. I'll try to find out. The person who studies this, who studies that particularly and is really good, his name's Vivek Wadhwa, W-A-D-H-W-A, I think. And so I'll look at his work, but you might as well.
Morning. Hector Rocha, with Fargo Advisor, also part of the Hispanic community. I am one of the faces in that immigration innovation, and this is a big topic, and it has been addressed in the bigger sense as a country. My question is, if we start by city, each city, this time St. Louis, is there any way or method or idea to promote this study, to promote this alternative that is, we have a very interesting conglomerate of people from different way of the community, so everybody in a city knows this is going on and get educated and on board of this idea, as we are fighting against stereotypes. And not everybody that speaks Spanish come from Mexico, as my father-in-law still believes that after 10 years of marriage, but it's okay. But that is one example that I would like to know. If this study have a portion that is a strong communication, go to colleges, communities, hey, this is happening. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's exactly the work of the steering committee right now, and that it's the steering committee is beginning to wrestle with what does success look like. What is the end state, the future state that we really want to create for this region? And I think what we're seeing is there'll be a mix of some immediate things that we can do, things we can start doing today. And actually, Kitty Radcliffe from the CVC, who was at our first meeting, came out with some ideas. And instead of waiting for the report to be done, she's gone out doing some things to make it a more welcoming place here for visitors and from around the world. So there's immediate actions we can take, and there will be some longer-term approaches that we're going to have to take. But I think what we're all committed to is changing up here and changing here. We can do that today. We can start today by being a more welcoming community. We can be more aware today of being a more welcoming community. And that is not a soft issue. That will change the trends for us. It really will. So I think what you've highlighted, what we believe we can do as this national policy debate is going on, is focus on, from the steering committee, what does success look like? What is the future state for this region? What are we trying to create together? And to look at breaking it down in short-term and long-term actions to move things forward. My personal sense is to get a sense of what the whole community could look like is to go into either the global workplaces like Monsanto or into our universities, because I think they both are microcosms of what we want the region to look like when we're done with this at this future point.
First of all, Rodney Krim, St. Louis Development Corporation, member of the steering committee. We did introduce the steering committee, but one of the reasons why all of you are here is because you indicated an interest in being an advisor to kind of help us through this. And so we wanted to at least take a moment to thank you for indicating that interest. And like the comment that you just made, those are things that will help us as we continue to move forward.
Yes, sir.
My name is Vincent Mutazwa. I represent the Congolese community of St. Louis. We are the refugees and the all Africans in St. Louis. right up now we are trying to build up the community of Africans living in St. Louis. But the problem I'm asking the panel here is that the government has already reached up or think about the education problem. Because once you come as the refugees, some of the refugees, they are coming, they are doctors. Some they are technicians, they know all how to do the work. But once he comes here, the first thing they tell him, the work is to wash the dish. Or just to send them to the company whereby they tell him just to clean the place for the company. Whereby this guy has got 2 or 3 degrees in Africa or in Europe. But it doesn't count here. It is really demoralizing our refugees. All the immigrants. I came from South Africa, South America, the same things. He comes with the degree and he comes here as an immigrant. He wants to work to develop this nation, but they found out that they tell him, says, you can't do it here just to clean or to wash the floor. Is it the panel found it out to say this is happening in some of the companies, or how the way we can solve this problem so that whoever comes just get the job according to the education he has received from where it's coming from.
Want to do that from a Palace National thing? I can talk about it. Well, you know, thank you for raising, that's another, thank you for raising that, because as Rodney said, that's one of the things that we're doing here today is getting these issues. We have more questions than we have answers, but I think that question has to be right in front of the steering committee's work. And I think as I've looked at this issue over time, it really has to do, there is a way, there's articulation policies within education and recognition policies that maybe are more controllable than in other policies that we might have. We have that issue in this country around articulation agreements between universities and in between states. So it's a framework that education leaders, I think, will need to grapple with, and thank you for raising it, because we want to make sure that's right in front of what the steering committee looks at, because it's such an opportunity. It is a respect for people who have come here from a refugee in a refugee situation, and I think it's that opportunity to really look beyond our normal credentialing viewpoint to see what really is learned, what has the individual brought with them from their knowledge. I think that's educators have solved that problem within the United States in many ways, so it still exists. So why not looking at that on a global basis? So I think that's a probable policy initiative that could be tackled with educators. I don't think it's good to go to educators and say, here's how to solve it. But I think we could go to the universities and say, how do you help us do this so that we can really translate this opportunity for others? I think that could make a difference.
It would actually be a really interesting Midwest initiative. I mean, that, talk about a way to create a magnet and make yourself more competitive. Creating a consortium of Midwest universities that did have a credentialing program, you could attract a lot of people. I mean, it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Anna Crossell, International Institute. I'm on the steering committee. I was just going to say I was on a call, in fact, 2 weeks ago with the Global Detroit people. And I was on a call about 2 weeks ago with the Global Detroit people, and they had a national recertification, recredentialing discussion at that point, because the issue is that we have two kinds of highly skilled or pre-trained individuals who arrive in the community. We have those that come to the universities, postdocs, etc. They have the skills, they have the English already. And then we have not just the refugees, but we have the DVs, the diversity visa people who come over here. And many of them are driving cabs and taking you back and forth to the airport. And if you talk to them, you find they were teachers and they had different kinds of careers before they arrived over here. What is a barrier to these other individuals, just like Vincent just mentioned, is this whole issue of recredentialing and the technical language skills that they need to be able to pass their degrees. And St. Louis does not have a recredentialing operation the way some of these other major areas of the country do, even here in the Midwest. And so I do think that would be of great value and something that, in fact, we were looking at even at the Institute, and that I'd love to be able to talk with more people about.
It's a very good point. Now, if we can just get St. Louis and Kansas City to talk to each other, we'll be okay.
Good morning, Mark Sutherland. Couple of points. I love the bite-side approach. I've been in this country for 23 years, and I see absolutely no progress in Washington in fixing a very broken system that really discriminates against people who want to come here legally. My brother's on a 10-year waiting list right now to get in this country. And he wants to start a business. He wants to embrace the American dream, and he can't. Unless he just wants to walk across the border, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants to come here legally. So I have a question. I also wanted to say on some of the points, my experience has been St. Louis is very inclusive. It's been very welcoming to myself. It's somewhere I would like to spend the rest of my life in. It's a great community. And at Monsanto, which is I work, so we're very well represented here at Monsanto, we bring students in for the summer from Scotland. And they love it here as well. Very welcoming community. They want to stay. They face the same problems that my brother does in that it's very, very hard to get in. My question is, beyond what you're going to be asking the companies to do, for those of us who are very personally connected to this issue, what can we be doing with the elements of this proposal that we're in agreement with?
It's a great question. We'd love to have anyone who agrees and wants to be part of it to join and be part of the Committee of 500. We're looking for members of the Committee of 500, and that's to see Jill, correct? And my organization also works on this in Washington. What we do full-time is it's business people pressing for reform, and we're doing it on an ongoing basis. So, I mean, it's not an either-or. Do both, sign the report, and get involved with us as well. We need, the problem has been, the reason I started my organization has been that to get businesses to speak up and say they want reform is not easy. Businesses, don't like controversial issues generally, and the trouble is we have a lot of Democratic votes. We don't have enough Republican and conservative Democratic votes. I mean, including one of your senators. They don't listen. They aren't necessarily impressed by people marching in the street, but they are impressed by business voices. And so we exist to lift business voices. And please sign the report. There are many ways to get engaged.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Evans. I'm an immigrant to this country. I started a business here. I have a twofold proposal. I'm the president of St. Louis Stuttgart Sister Cities, and I know the city of Stuttgart has 150 nationalities living in their city, and they have done a fine job over the last 20 years integrating all these international people into the city of Stuttgart. And maybe one of the things is the steering committee may want to look at the sister cities St. Louis has and how they have integrated immigrants, what they have done to make them feel comfortable, what kind of educational level. And like some of you said, I run into immigrants, students here all the time that would love to stay here in this country, but can't because they cannot find a job within the visa requirement, so they have to leave. These are highly educated people that we could keep here if the visa requirements would be made much easier for these people to stay here. Elizabeth, question for you. Appreciate Monsanto's leadership, but in order to have success, we need more corporations, more companies to get involved. How can they get involved with this?
Well, my first thought before they can get involved, I look to this room. I really think one of the primary roles that certainly the steering committee can play, but this room can play, is helping elevate the education level, helping elevate the familiarity on this issue and bring more insight. And this happens with your communities, this happens with your neighbors, this happens at your children's schools, on helping them understand what the issue is and what it isn't. Dispelling some of the myths that may or may not be out there that several folks have alluded to today. It's a topic that I think I can speak for myself. I think companies have tackled at a very personal level to meet our business needs. I think organizations today are looking more broadly at corporates' sustainability efforts, our responsibility to communities, our responsibility as we all globalize to different places around the world. And so I see an increasing interest in learning more about the issues, and I think that's our first step.
Good morning. Raymond Lai of City of University City, Hi, Governor. Just want to echo some of the points raised earlier. City of University City is kind of a diverse inner-ring suburb, in case you're from our town, that we have a pretty strong international community established. One, we have a lot of international students because it's close to Washington University. And so, as you said before, a lot of graduate students, postdoc, PhDs, and even from medical school, which is located in the city of St. Louis, they like to live closer to the Loop area, which is closer to the main campus. So we have a strong presence of international students, highly educated, and also we have what we call the Olive Boulevard, the section that is international business district, composed of many small businesses, run and operated, have people hired, and a lot of them are immigrants, as far as I know. So, looking for our region, and I know there's other communities, international districts in the region as well, but how we can eventually, after the policy has been established, could translate into, in terms of economic development, how to bring more jobs to enhance those already established international businesses. And also, from a university city location standpoint, because we're close to Washington University, and also I know that there are some other graduate students from other universities in the region who like to live in our area. And we're looking into what jobs we can bring, because they like to stay in an urban setting, and to keep them here. We have a lot of fine healthcare institutions, high tech, and incubators. So I think just working with smaller businesses, working with educational institutions, because they are the conduits to bring more international students, scholars, whatnot, to this area, and how we can, through different ways, to create more jobs and business opportunities, so that they feel like they're welcome, and that they could keep bringing more people to help to work in those businesses. So, just like to echo some of the comments made earlier.
Take one last question, or two last questions, okay. Both women.
Thank you. I'm Marty Hereford. I'm a partner at Armstrong Teasdale, and I practice business immigration. And I go out in the community, and I go to cocktail parties, and to me, immigration is the one issue that everybody has an opinion about, but nobody gets it. They don't understand the mechanics behind it. The one thing that I see, and I'd be interested, Elizabeth, to get your thoughts on, which I don't know a lot of people really understand. We focus on we need to be competitive, we need immigrants to help our businesses, but I think one thing that I see, and I see my clients spending a lot of time on, we have particularly people from India who come in, they go to school, they get their master's degree, they may get their PhD, they get a job, they work for 2 years, the company starts to sponsor them for the green card. During that time, they go home, usually for a prearranged marriage. They come back with their wife, who's not able to work. So she's at home, though she's very educated. She probably has a master's from India in engineering, and she cannot work. They start to have children who are now U.S. citizens, who are now ingrained in the schools. And their head of household is now on their 10th year of waiting to become a permanent resident. And so they're in limbo. And I'm curious, and I see it with my clients, the impact it has on companies and the resources they spend and the time and the energy they spend to make sure that this employee is still happy when he doesn't know where he's going to be, how long can he stay, he can't vote for his children's school board, president of their school board, their kids are ingrained, have never been back to India, and their wife can't work and is depressed. And I'm curious as to what the impact that has on our area businesses.
Well said, and I echo your comments. In addition to resources, when you think of the cost and the time involved in helping these people maintain the right to be here in the States, I think the factor that I'm particularly interested in is around engagement. So if we look inside our corporation and we survey for engagement each year, we have found direct financial correlations from the health, happiness, and willingness of our employees to go the extra mile. And having the burden, the emotional burden of being on the edge all the time can provide a big strain, can produce a big strain on an employee, and therefore can help diminish the engagement of our folks. So certainly something we focus on. To respond to the question earlier and in limbo, so there are things, very simple things that I think corporations can do to start. Things like networks within your workplace. So we have 9 employee networks in Monsanto focused on, we have a Monsanto Asian community, the Latino network, African Americans in Monsanto, et cetera, and non-minority oriented networks as well, military, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transvestite networks. These are all environments for people to feel welcome with and to help feel a greater sense of community in a corporation. And what we find is, a couple of you have referenced communities within St. Louis. What we find is, so for example, our Asian community at Monsanto, high population living in the region or the area that you're discussing, highly active in university, furthering education, et cetera. So one very simple thing we can do is to make this a more welcoming, more engaging,
more beneficial place for folks to be.
Good morning. My name is Sylvie Laboutier, and I will actually speak from experience. Born and raised in Montreal, Canada, started my professional career in Montreal, and next thing you know, there's an international company that wants me in this country. So first of all, very excited about the opportunity. Once in the immigration process, that's another story. I've been brought through H-1B. Apparently, fast-track process. Way too long, way too complex, way too stressful. Takes away from your mind at work, which was the reason you were brought. Question, twofold question in your report. What are the recommendations in terms of a true fast track when there's a demand to make it much more smoother and quicker and less stressful? Second question, what about those quota? Do you address the quota of the H-1B? In other words, would there be a way to waive those quota and just rely on the demand? For example, Monsanto has whatever demand. Why not go with that?
Yeah, really good questions, poignant story. This is what we decided not to do in the report, is to make specific policy suggestions of that kind. What we said is the Midwest needs more skilled workers. And we said we need a smoother, less bureaucratic, less painful path for skilled workers. But we decided that we would not go into exactly how they should change the visa process or how they should change how they come up with the numbers, because we feel that that's, how are we going to get 500 people to agree on specific changes like that, and much less how are we going to get Congress to make that specific change. We thought it would be more powerful if we just said to Congress, we need you to fix this. So, you're absolutely right. Somebody needs to give thought to that, and there are many other groups in Washington that do, but this report decided that our best value add was not to get into the weeds of here's how you make the new car, but rather to say we need a new car, you please fix it, Congress.
Any other comments? Let me bring it to a close. We're running a little bit over, but not bad. Rachel, again, thank you very, very much for your leadership in the Chicago Global Council. Tim, thank you very much. Denny, thank you for all of your work. Jack Strauss, would you please stand? Jack has done an excellent study that if you haven't read it, I would encourage you to do so, because he talks about the numbers and why it's important. Let me tell you, to end by just telling you a little brief story. I knew a gentleman that there was a carrier in an office. He got the mail every day, did all the hard work. He was from Puerto Rico. His wife taught Spanish in the local school, the care director at the parish grade school also. The daughter was a star pupil at her high school. She played tennis, was on the track team, had dreams of becoming a lawyer. During that process, it found out that they had been told by a lawyer what they needed to do to become an American citizen wasn't accurate. They got deported back to Puerto Rico. They went through this process for several years. She got married, the daughter, here in this country in a civil ceremony with her college sweetheart. They decided they wanted to go back to Puerto Rico so the parents could witness the wedding in the church. The father had been going through prostate cancer. It was on the mends. He was so happy when he heard they had landed. He had a heart attack and died. That Marvin worked in my office as governor. So I see it personally, what can happen, and how lives can be changed. If you really want to have an impact, get involved. Talk to your elected officials. They're only going to do what they think you want them to do. If you sit on the sidelines, they will sit on the sidelines. They will not move faster than you push them to move. We have a case to be made. It's an economic case, not a social case, which I believe in, or an ethical case, but an economic case. You look at those regions around the country, and you look at those cities that are growing, and they have a growing immigrant population. You look at those that send the message that you're not welcome, and you see a declining population, you see a declining economic status. And this is not all about how much money we spend to get the message across. It's about having the right priorities and sending the right message through everything that we do. So I hope out of this group today, we come up with 500 plus people to be engaged in this. We need to have more CEOs from corporations and companies and presidents of organizations sitting in this room, hearing this message, and believing it and talking it. This is about our future. And this is about all of our children's future. Thank you very, very much.